A long time ago, in a galaxy far, far away. Random House Audio presents Star Wars Medstar 2 Jedi Healer by Michael Reaves and Steve Perry. Read for you by Jonathan Davis. Rimsu 7. The Jasserak Highlands of Tanlasa, near the Karahan Steppes. Planet Drongar. 2 years after the Battle of Geonosis. Lying on his bed, Jos Vandar glared at the young man in the lieutenant's uniform standing in the doorway to his kiosk. Hardly more than a boy, really. He looked like he was about 14 standard years old. What? Captain Vandar? I'm Lieutenant Kornell Divini. That's nice. And you're standing there in the open doorway, letting the heat into my humble home because... The boy looked slightly uncomfortable. I've been assigned to Rimsu 7 as a surgeon, sir. Jos sat up on his cot and stared. Was he hearing right? This child was a doctor? Impossible. His disbelief must have shown because the boy said, somewhat stiffly, Coruscant Medical, sir. Graduated 2 years ago. Then did a year of internship and a year of residency at Big Zoo. That did bring a smile from Jos. Big Zoo was the unofficial name of Galactic Polysapient, the multi-sentient species med center on Alderaan at which he himself had interned. Look, Lieutenant, Divini, was it? Uli. Jos blinked. I beg your pardon? Everyone calls me Uli, sir. I'm from Tatooine near the Dune Sea. It's short for Ulia, the word for sand people children. How I got the nickname is kind of an interesting story. Lieutenant Divini. Far be it from me to question the wisdom of the Republic. I don't think anybody really could since they don't have any wisdom to question. So, fine. Welcome to the war. You check in with the unit commander yet? Colonel Vides? Yes, sir. He sent me here. Jos sighed. All right, I guess we'd better find you a place to stay. Jos rose from his cot. Young Divini looked uncomfortable. The colonel said I was to bunk with you, sir. Stop calling me sir. I'm not your father, even though I feel old enough for that these days. Call me Jos. Vides sent you to stay here? Yes, sir. Yes, Jos. Jos shook his head. Lieutenant Kornell Uli Divini was in for a rude awakening, and Jos did not envy him it. On the other hand, there was one possible positive aspect to the situation. Tulk would probably love the kid. Thinking of her did bring a genuine smile to his lips. His relationship with the Lordian nurse was the one good thing that had come out of this war. The only good thing, as far as Jos was concerned. Den-Dur was on a mission. It was a mission that had little to do with the war between the Confederacy and the Republic, except in rather abstract terms. And even though he was a freelance field correspondent, it was not something he was likely to file a story on. No, this quest was to aid a friend. Someone whom he'd become acquainted with during his stay at Rimsu 7, and whom he'd come to consider a kindred spirit. Den was sitting with his comrade in the base cantina. He was nursing a particularly potent concoction of spice brew, Sullustan gin, and old jank spirit called a sonic servo driver. His companion, as usual, was drinking nothing. Den focused his large eyes blearily upon I-5YQ. The droid had an annoying tendency, exacerbated by the polarized drop-tack lenses the Sullustan wore, to separate into multiple images. Other than that, all seemed normal enough. We gotta get you drunk, he told I-5. And this is such an imperative because... It's not fair, Den told him. Everybody else can get blasted out of their craniums. Which they do with alarming frequency, I've noticed. Everyone except you. It's no good. Gotta fix that. Assuming for a moment that intoxication is a state to which I aspire, I see a number of problems that must be solved, not the least of which is, I have no metabolism to process ethanol.
Right, Den nodded. Gotta work around that. Don't worry, I'll think of something.
At this point, you'd be hard-pressed to think of your own name. No offense, but I wouldn't trust you to rewire a mouse droid's circuits right now. Maybe later, when you've...
The Celestin suddenly fluttered his dew flaps in excitement. Got it! It's perfect!
What?
The droid's tone was wary. We do a partial power down on your core. Scramble the sensory inputs a little bit. Loosen up those logic circuits.
Sorry. Multiple redundancy backups. They're hardwired. I could no more voluntarily interfere with them than you could stop breathing.
Den frowned at his empty mug. Blast. He brightened. Okay. How about we realign the circuitry directly? Just temporarily, of course.
That might work, if you had the Pick-a-Droid engineers needed to do the realignment, which are only available at Cybot Galactica repair centers or their authorized representatives. I believe the nearest one is approximately 12 parsecs from here.
Den belched and shrugged. Well, we'll figure something out. Don't worry. Dender's no quitter. I'm on it, buddy. His head dropped to the table with an audible thud, and a moment later, he began to snore. I-5 stared at the unconscious reporter, then sighed.
Something about this feels so familiar.
Jos wouldn't have started the kid off this way, had there been any choice, but the operating theater was full of wounded clone troopers. The drone of the medlifters bringing in new injuries seemed as constant as a heat exchanger as they arrived, and anybody who could lift a vibroscalpel was needed, now. He didn't have time to watch the kid. He was up to his elbows in the chest cavity of a clone full of shrapnel. He started to ask for the pressure field to be stepped up a notch, but Tulk beat him to it. +6 on the field, she said to the 2-1B droid managing the unit. Tulk Latrine was a Lordian. Her kind had an uncanny ability to read most species' micro-expressions and to somehow sense emotions, to the extent that it almost seemed like telepathy. She was also the best surgical nurse in the Rimsu, and more, she was beautiful, compassionate, and Jos's sweetheart, despite her being Exter, non-Permies, an outsider, not of his homeworld clan, which meant there wasn't supposed to be any future for their relationship. The Vandars were Enster, and that meant marriage had to be with someone from one's own system, preferably one's homeworld. There were no exceptions. Temporary alliances with Exters were allowed, with a wink and a nod about sowing one's wild grains and all, but you didn't bring a non-Permies girlfriend home to meet your kinfolk, not unless you were willing to give up your clan and be permanently ostracized. Not to mention the infamy such an act would offer your family. He married an Exter? Can you imagine? His parents keeled over dead from shame. Jos glanced at Uli and then at Tulk, who said, Uli seems to be doing okay. The orderly droids just wheeled his first patient out and they weren't heading toward the morgue. He's a cute kid. Jos shook his head. Yeah, cute. He risked a quick look around. They were still 2 doctors and 3 FX-7 surgical droids short of a full unit, and that was going to cost them today. Even as he thought this, he saw a masked and gowned figure step up to one of the empty tables. The sterile field kicked on, and the figure gave a bring 'em gesture to the orderly droids. I don't know who that is, Tulk said, as Jos was about to ask. After months of work in this tropical pest hole, the OT doctors could recognize each other even when faces and heads were covered with surgical masks and caps, which meant this was a new player. And that raised the question, why hadn't anybody told him, Captain Vandar, the chief surgeon, that they had a new guy? A fresh bleeder opened up, sprayed blood in a fan, and Jos suddenly had other things to worry about. 9 patients later, Jos caught an easy one. A simple lacerated lung he was able to glue stat shut in a few minutes.
Tulk began to close and Jos looked around. I could use a hand over here, the new surgeon.
Sample complete. Ready to continue?